You're listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, episode 210. How do builders like us make a dramatic difference in the lives of our students in spite of all the obstacles we face? How do you keep your vision for your school from being held hostage by resistant teachers, uncooperative parents, ridiculous district policies, or a lack of time, money, or resources? If you're facing those challenges right now, here is where you'll find the answers, strategies, and actionable tips you need to overcome any obstacle you face. You don't have to wait to make a difference in the lives of the people you serve. You can turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Let's get started. Hey builders, welcome to another episode of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robin Jackson, and today I wanted to talk to you about how you can solve conflicts like a builder. Any kind of disagreement that's happening, think about a time when you want to move in one direction, but the rest of your team is pushing back and saying we need to move in another direction. Think about conflicts that you have around, you think a teacher should be working on one thing and the teacher thinks that they should be working on something else. Any kind of disagreement like that, how do you solve it calmly? How do you solve it in a way that's affirming to other people? How do you avoid getting into a nasty back and forth? How do you avoid having to, kind of flex your positional power muscles in order to get people to do things? Instead, how do you truly resolve that disagreement so that everybody walks out on the same page? And how do you do it like a builder? Now, before I get into that, a couple of things. First of all, you all have blown me away. I decided to talk about the private consulting that I do for clients on the podcast for the first time. And I wasn't sure if that was even something, if the podcast was the right place to talk about it. But the response has just been crazy. We only have 2 spots left. We've already had people come in and try to grab those other spots. So if you want one of the remaining 2 spots for consulting, you need to call us very quickly. And so what I want you to do is go to mindstepsinc.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see something that says schedule a call, and get on the schedule and talk to John. Now, a lot of people have been asking, I'm not sure what they get. They kind of know they want some support and some coaching and some, private work, but they don't know what they get. Well, what you get is you get me, and we work one-on-one together to accomplish something very specific. So this is not a long-term coaching engagement. So you're not signing up for 10 months of coaching. In fact, these slots are for 1 month of coaching. And so what we do is we get together during that month and we decide what is it that you want to accomplish in that month. And then we are getting together a meeting to help you accomplish it. So let me give you an example of the kinds of things that you might accomplish, right? So for some of you, it's, you are a district leader and you want to get a clear vision, mission, and core values established. And that's really important. So we would work together for that month to help you facilitate that with your team so that at the end of the month, you have a vision, you have a mission, and you have core values. Or maybe you're at the superintendent's level or the associate superintendent's level and you're looking at the org chart and it's not quite right. You inherited, an organizational structure. It's not working. It's not moving you towards your vision. And so you really want to spend some time examining your district org chart. You want to make sure you have the right people in the right seats, doing the right work. And then you want to make sure you can get your entire team aligned. We have some great tools to help you figure that out, make sure that people are in the right place, and then making sure that everything that they do and the work they do is aligned towards reaching your vision. One of my favorite things to do is to help you remove yourself from being the bottleneck in the work. So if you're feeling like people won't make a decision unless you're in the meeting, or people won't make a decision unless they run it by you first, and so you feel like you're just always being CC'd on emails and always being pulled in a ton of different directions, then we would get together And we have a process that I would take you through to help you onboard your team members to taking more responsibility, removing you from being the bottleneck in your district, which is perfect if you are a superintendent or an associate superintendent. Maybe you feel like you don't know what's going on in your district as a superintendent or associate superintendent. And so, we would work together, and people love this one, where we create this district dashboard that helps you keep track of everything. Even if you're like a principal supervisor, creating that dashboard is a great way to help you keep track of all of the principals you support or all of the schools that you support. So if you're in a district position and you're supporting a lot of different schools, creating that dashboard, putting it together, not only helps you keep track, but it helps you start moving levers that you need to move in order to get all of your schools being successful. Maybe you are not sure what to do next. And so one of the tools we have is a district blueprint, and it helps you figure out, okay, how do we get to our goals? Like, what your goal is, but you're not sure how to get there. We would work together for a month to do that. Anyway, I'm probably talking too much. You get the idea. There are some things that you want to accomplish, very specific goals that you want to accomplish, but you need some support getting there. Then this opportunity would be great for you, because you and I would work together over the course of a month, and we would get together at the very beginning and decide, okay, what do we want to have accomplished by the end of the month? And then we work together to accomplish it. So this is not like coaching, like therapy, or, not there's anything wrong with therapy, but it's not that. Instead, this is coaching to help you accomplish something, to help you get unstuck in a particular area. And at the end of that month, you have a problem that has been the pain in your behind solved. So if you are there, if you have something that you've been trying to figure out how to do and get paid beyond, you haven't been able to get beyond it, you're stuck, or there's something specific that you want to accomplish and you want to make sure that it's done and done well and right, and you want the tools and the coaching and the accountability and the resources and the support to help you do that, that's what we work together doing. And we get together on Zoom, but we also, get together and we have a Voxer set up and, however it is you communicate. So it's like having me in your pocket for a month to help you accomplish something. If you want that, and it's only for people at the district level, because this is not a cheap investment. Like, if you are a principal and you want that kind of help, the best thing for you to do is get on the wait list for Buildership University, because I provide that kind of support for the people in Buildership University, focused on what to do at the school level. But if you're at the district level, then Buildership University, it could work for you, but a lot of times people at the district level have, they have very specific things they want to accomplish. They want more one-on-one support. And so if you're at the district level, this is a good opportunity for you to get some things done, to get unstuck. Again, go to mindstepsync.com, go to the upper right-hand corner where it says schedule a call, click on that and schedule a call, and we'll get it done. All right. Second thing, very important, we want to get the word out to more people. So many of you know that our vision is that we want to help all of the principals we support achieve their vision for their schools in 3 years or less. But our mission, especially this is one of my personal missions that always been this. My mission is to help every child be successful in school. That's why we do this work. But that can't happen if we don't make buildership more ubiquitous. And so would you help me out? Would you share this podcast with someone else? Like, for instance, if you have a colleague at the admin level, they're a principal, they're an assistant principal, or they're a district administrator, and your colleague is getting into a lot of little conflicts with teachers, or they're getting a lot of pushback from a particular group of teachers, or they feel like the arguments are starting to get personal, would you share this podcast episode with them? So not only will you help them, but, they're going to look at you like, oh, thank goodness, you've given me a resource. You see me, you're thinking about me, you're helping me out with my challenge. So would you mind sharing this podcast episode with them? I want to get the word out. I want to grow our tribe of builders. I want, my goal, I want every leader to choose to stop leading and start building. And so if you could help me with that, it would mean the world to me. I would be so grateful. So thanks for helping me out with that. All right, you ready to get into talking about resolving disagreements? I've been thinking about this ever since I heard it or read it somewhere, and someone's talking about this process in a marriage. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, at first I was like, oh, that's kind of odd. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, this is the way that builders resolve any kind of disagreement. And it's so powerful. And a lot of times we kind of know this, but being able to have the words to say, the script, like what's your go-to for resolving conflict could be helpful. In fact, I'm actually thinking about creating a resource called Builder Scripts. I'm not sure I'm going to do it yet, but there are some phrases that I find are helpful to be able to say in situations that help you. They give you the language to be able to navigate those situations. And today I want to share one of those with you that could really help you if you are trying to navigate a disagreement and make sure that you come out of that disagreement resolved. Because here's what happens. When bosses meet disagreement, they flex their positional power muscles, right? They immediately resort to, well, I'm the boss, so we're going to do things my way. They don't resolve disagreement. They quash disagreement. They crush it. And if you're going to make your school feel safe, if you're going to promote innovation, if you're going to build other builders, you can't just shut people down. And a lot of times people get frustrated or they say, well, sometimes you have to because, we have to move forward and we can't stay mired in disagreement. But it's not binary. It's not either or. Either I shut you down or we stay stuck. There is another option, but bosses don't see that. And so you end up silencing voices. You end up silencing dissent, and then you get into this echo chamber where nobody will speak up. People begin to hoard information. Nobody feels safe. You create a back channel because nobody can talk to you, and you think you've quashed the disagreement when all you've done is sent it underground where it festers and morphs and grows and becomes this cancer in your organization. So you don't want to be a boss. What leaders do is they try to negotiate disagreement, right? So they, well, let me hear your side. And then you get into these debates. And then you say, well, maybe we could do this or maybe we can do that. And the debates don't actually bring people over to your side. So even after you've gone on and on and on and on and on about something, what normally happens is nobody's mind is changed and you just end up, well, either we're going to go forward or you concede because you don't feel like you can go forward with the people in the state that they're in because of your debate. And so you just let it go. Well, that's not resolving anything. That one is just a power play light. Like either you try to convince somebody to come to your side. And so you're coming into that conversation, trying to win them over, or they get so entrenched and you feel like you can't convince them. And so you end up having to give up doing something you want to do, or you just move forward with it anyway. And it's not steamrolling over people, but it is just, you're not silencing them. You've heard them, but then at the end of the day, you're like, well, okay, but I'm going to do it anyway. So you heard them like with your ears, the sounds coming from their mouth came and they registered in you, but it didn't influence you. It didn't impact you. And so people really don't feel heard. And I see this happening a lot, even with the most best intentions out there, leaders who really do want to listen. But the challenge is when you listen and you give ear to people, then people feel like, well, if you don't change your mind, you didn't hear me. So it's a setup. And how many of you have been in that situation where you have listened to somebody and heard them out and then said, well, I hear you out. I just don't agree with you. We're going to go for it anyway. Now they're mad at you because you didn't change your mind. Well, the way that you set up that listening conversation set you up to make people mad, right? You made people think that they had an opportunity to change, and maybe they did have an opportunity to change your mind, but it didn't change your mind. So now what? And now you've got hurt feelings. Now you've got resentment. Now you've got people who will subtly sabotage the work because they don't buy into it. I mean, how many of you are experiencing that right now? How many of you have people who disagree with you and they're vocal and they're pushing back vocally, or they have just, become passive aggressive? Well, it's your show. And then they leave it up to you because they don't feel like they had a meaningful part in that decision. And we're looking to help to find a way to give teachers more meaningful voice or students more meaningful voice. But just listening to somebody and hearing them out does not give them voice, because you've heard them out, but at the end of the day, the power rests with you. You decide whether what they have to say is valid or not. You decide whether or not what they say will impact what you want to do. The power is all yours. And so you're not giving them voice. And even the concept of giving them voice, it means that you have it to give, rather than creating a space, a container where everybody can voice their concerns or their opinions or their ideas in a way that is safe and in a way where there isn't this power dynamic that's silencing some voices. One of the things I love to ask when I'm doing like focus groups or, visiting schools are, what are the rules around who gets heard and who doesn't? I mean, have you ever asked that about your school? What are the unspoken rules about who gets heard and who doesn't? What are the unspoken rules about who gives people voice and who has that to give in the first place? And if you really looked at that, you'd realize that even the things that you think are good, we had a forum, we heard students out. Yeah, but did it do anything? You got to pick what parts of what students told you you're going to act on and what parts you're going to ignore. So did you give them voice? Or did you just perpetuate the power imbalance that made them feel like they didn't have a voice to begin with? So a lot of this stuff that we were trained to do as leaders is not helping. It's in my opinion, a waste of time. And your teachers will begin to feel that way too, especially if you continually have these committees where you put teachers on the committees and you ask their opinions and they give their opinions. But at the end of the day, you decide to do what you're going to do anyway, or there's a perception that you're doing that. It's going to backfire if you say, I want students to have more voice, and the students don't say what you want to hear, or they raise issues you're not prepared to deal with. And so those issues go unaddressed, or you think you're addressing the issues because you were listening, but you didn't really hear them. And now the students feel like, why bother? Well, then you've actually made things worse than if you had just gone and done what you wanted to do in the first place. So what's the solution? Well, if you are a builder, the solution is very, very simple. Now, I know I sound like a broken record, but hear me out. If you have created agreement around your vision, your mission, and your core values, if everybody agrees that your vision is what we are building together, that is the ultimate goal, that your mission is why we're building this thing, that mission creates boundaries about how you pursue your vision. And then you have a set of non-negotiable core values about how we will get there. Then disagreements become easy to resolve. They become easy. And let me give you the language. Let's say you want to do one thing for your school, but you have a group of teachers who are pushing back. And they're like, no, we don't want to do that. Let's say it's your sixth grade team. They're like, no, we don't want to do. They're fighting you on it. Rather than going into the sixth grade team room and sitting down your sixth grade team and say, listen, y'all are fighting me on this, but we need to get this done because this is what the data says, and y'all just need to get in line like a boss would do. Or going into that sixth grade team room and sitting down with the team and saying, I'd like to hear you out because I'm getting some pushback and we're trying to move forward and you're trying to make a big case. And some people kind of saying, well, I mean, I can see that, I guess, but then they're still kind of resistant. And other people are like, well, I don't agree with you. And then you're saying, well, I'm sorry, we disagree. We're going to have to agree to disagree because we're moving forward anyway, like a leader. Instead, you go in like a builder and you say, let's start out first. Do we agree that this is our vision, this is our mission, and these are our core values? And If they say no, well, that's the problem, right? But if they say yes, then here's the phrase. Here's the magic phrase. All right, if we both agree that this is our vision and our mission and our core values, I'm pushing this decision. I want to make this decision because I believe it will get me there. But I want to hear from you. What data are you using to formulate your opinion that this move will not get us there? In other words, you're asking them, what data are they using to make the decision not to support what you want to do and how you want to move forward? And then when you've heard them out, you can say, that's interesting. I was using this data. And then you can share. You're not trying to convince them. You're just simply sharing with them the data that you use to make that decision. And now it becomes very equal, because it's not, this is what I want and I'm the principal, or this is what you want and we want and we're the teachers and we're not moving because you can't move without us. Instead, you're just looking at the data. And one of three things is going to happen. Either they're going to share their data and their data is somehow flawed, or they're looking at the data differently, in which case you just clear that up. And then once you're all seeing this data, looking at this, the data and seeing it the same way, then you come to agreement on the same decision. Or their data is strong and your data is flawed, in which case you can say, you know what, I hadn't considered that. That makes a good point. And then you can adjust things to accommodate the new data, and then you don't lose your power. You actually gain power because, you don't gain power, but you gain the respect because you are committed to something bigger. The vision, mission, and core values have the power. You don't have the power. Neither do they. The vision, mission, and core values have the power. And that way, when you're looking at the data and you're saying, okay, I hadn't considered that. That's a good point. You have the ability to back up, to change, to adjust in a way that doesn't diminish your standing. I should say standing rather than power, because it really is your standing. That's what we're really worried about. And then, so either their data is flawed or your data is flawed, or in the conversation, you realize that you are both prioritizing different sources of data. And if that's the case, then you can have a really interesting and meaningful discussion about which set of data has the bigger saying in whether or not you achieve your vision, mission, and core values. And you resolve that not by being a better arguer than they are, but you resolve it by going back to your vision, mission, and core values. And no matter which of those three scenarios happens, the outcome is the same. You resolve the issue and you get more and more committed to the vision, mission, and core values. Now, that's a philosophical thing. Let me show you how it can work. Let me give you an example of how it could work in your school. Okay, so again, let's talk to your sixth grade team. Let's say you want your sixth grade team to start, your sixth grade team to all start doing some, using their PLC time to look at student work and to do some grading calibration. Because one of the things that you realize is that depending on who's grading the paper, an A in one class is not an A, it might be a B in another teacher's class. And so you want them to start grading so that there can be some calibration amongst all of your sixth grade teams. So no matter what individual team a student is on in sixth grade, that student is getting the same feedback from everybody. Now that sounds reasonable, right? Okay, so you go to your sixth grade team and you say, I want, the next grade level meeting, I want us to do some grade calibration. I want you to use this protocol so that we can get the grades calibrated and we can make sure kids are getting consistent grades. And they push back. They don't want to do it. They're like, you know what? My grading standards are mine. This other teacher's grading standards are theirs. And you're forcing us into uniformity. And they're pushing back. Now, if you're a boss, you go in and you're like, I don't care. This is what we're going to do. You go in a meeting, you sit in a meeting, you have your coach in there too. Your coach is facilitating the protocol. You're dragging people through the protocol. And at the end of the meeting, what have you learned? Nothing. Because everybody goes back to doing what they were going to do before. Okay. Now, if you're a leader, you try to convince them. You try to talk about the merits of the protocol that you want them to use. You may collect some data that shows that the grading is not calibrated. You may tell them a story about a particular student who went from one team to the next. You may share with them a parent complaint. You may try to convince them. Some teachers will be like, well, okay, I'll do it. Other teachers are sitting there passively aggressively fighting it. And after it's over, they're like, see, I told you this was stupid and it's not going to work. And so you've never, ever accomplished the thing you want to accomplish, which is to get the grades calibrated. Now, if you're a builder, you're going to do it differently. You're going to start out by saying, hey, listen, let's sit down. We have some disagreement around whether or not we should do this grade calibration protocol. Okay, so let's start out with just our vision. Our vision is that we want all students to be at or above grade level, and we want students to grow at least show a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of school in all 4 subjects. Do we all still agree that that's where we're headed? That's what we're building? If you get a yes, you move to the second question. If you get a no, let's stop. Let's talk about it. Okay. Then you can say, listen, our mission. Okay. So we all agree about our vision. Our mission is that we want to make sure that we give students more options and help them to make better choices with the options they have. Do we all still agree that that's our mission? No? You stop there. You talk about that. You resolve that. Yes? Okay. All right. Well, our core values that we all said were non-negotiable are: number 1, we want to keep things simple. Number 2, we want to make sure that, I don't know, I'm making up core values. Let me use some of the core values from some of the people in BU. So number 1, we want to keep things simple. Number 2, we want to keep the student at the center of all of our conversations. And number 3, we want to make sure that we take the big risk to get the big results. Okay, so do we still agree that those 3 core values are non-negotiable? And if they say no, well, then we need to go back to the entire staff, because you said in front of the entire staff that was non-negotiable for you. So now you're changing your mind. That's fine. We need to go to the staff and talk about it. We got a bigger issue. If it's yes, we still agree those are non-negotiable. Okay. All right. So if we're all in agreement about that, then the disagreement is not about the most fundamental parts of our school. The disagreement is about how we get there. Now, I believe we get there. Then that one of the things that's going to help us get there to achieve our vision, mission, and core values is we have to get calibrated around grades. And so I've been looking at ways to do this, and I believe this protocol will do it. But you all feel differently. So I'm interested in hearing, what data are you using to say that's not the way we get there, or that grade calibration isn't the thing? Do we agree that we need to have grades that are calibrated? And if the answer is yes, then let's talk about how we get there. This is the data I'm using to say that this is the protocol we should use, and this is how I believe it'll get there. What data are you using to say this is not the protocol we need to use? Now, if they say, I don't agree that our grades are not calibrated, and then you can say, all right, what data is leading you to that decision? Well, I think that, I looked at the grades and they look fine to me. And, so then you realize they're not using data. They're just using feelings. You say, okay, I understand that's how you feel. But the data that I'm using looks a little different. I'm using data based on taking this paper for these 5 students and looking at how they did in this team and then how they're doing in this team, whatever it is, right? So you go through and now look at the difference in that conversation. You're not arguing. You are hearing people out. As you're listening to people, you can see what's the sticking point, and it's usually not what you think it is. As they're listening to you, they see your logic, your reasoning, but you're doing it by sharing your reasoning, not by convincing them. Because I don't know that people necessarily want to be convinced, right? But if you instead of just going in with an agenda of trying to convince them, you're just saying, I'm trying to be transparent about the data that I'm using. I'm interested in hearing the data you're using. And then you can start to see where you really disagree. And when you do that, when you have that conversation, not debate, not argument, conversation, everybody feels heard. You feel heard. They feel heard. And then you walk out and they're usually like, okay, I can see that. Or you can say, okay, so your pushback is really not about the process. It's just about that the process is usurping other time that you could be using to do other things in your meeting. All right. So you believe that the other things you're doing in the meeting are of a greater priority than this, or do you believe that they're not a greater priority? We just don't have another place, another container to accomplish those things. Do you see how the more you ask questions, the more you get to the source of the disagreement, and the more you can walk out of there resolving it so that everybody wins? You see, the moment you decide to become a builder, everything changes. It's not that on the surface, you're still got to resolve conflict. You still got to resolve disagreements. That's on the surface. But how you do your work is dramatically different. When you're a boss, you are steamrolling over people. And sometimes you feel like you have to do that because you feel like people are dragging their feet and you have this sense of urgency that really isn't a sense of urgency. It's more of a sense of panic, right? Like, oh, we got to get some stuff done. So I just need to steamroll over people. But that always backfires. You push stuff through and it will never work, right? When you're a leader, you feel like, oh, well, I gotta wait for everybody else. I gotta negotiate. I gotta get everybody on board. And so you spend all of your time cajoling and convincing people, and it's just a more polite form of steamrolling. You just out-argue them. You just out-debate them, or they outweigh you. So it's still this tug of war. You're not on the same side. You're trying to get them to do something you want. They're trying not to be forced or cajoled or convinced to do something they don't want to do. Do you see? You're on different sides. But when you are a builder, the vision, mission, and core values means that you're starting from the same side. We all want this. So right now, our disagreement is about what we want. Our disagreement is about how we get there. So let's examine the data that each of us is using to make the decision about how we get there. And let's come to some agreement. But we're all on the same side. At no point in that conversation is it us against them or them against you. It is always we are on the same side. Can you see how powerful that is? So I challenge for you this week. Stop arguing. Stop steamrolling. Stop feeling like it's us against them. Stop trying to convince people to do something. Instead, put a vision, mission, and core values in place, because that solves everything. It just does. It immediately repositions you and your teachers so that you are on the same side. And then when there are times when you disagree about how to move forward towards that vision, mission, and core values, it's simply a matter of asking the question, I'm interested in understanding what data you're using to make that decision. And here's the data I'm using to make that decision. And then comparing the two and looking at them and figuring out, are we, first of all, coming from flawed data? Are we prioritizing different data? Let's unpack that a little bit more. And usually in doing that, you find a way to move forward in agreement, because instead of steamrolling or cajoling, you handled that disagreement like a builder. I'll talk to you next time. Hey, if you're ready to get started being a builder right away, then I want to invite you to join us at Buildership University. It's our exclusive online community for builders just like you, where you'll be able to get the exact training that you need to turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Inside, you'll find our best online courses, live trainings with me, tons of resources, templates, and exemplars, and monthly live office hours with me, where you can ask me anything and get my help on whatever challenge you're facing right now. If you're tired of hitting obstacle after obstacle and you're sick of tiny little incremental gains each year, if you're ready to make a dramatic difference in your school right now, then you need to join Buildership University. Just go to buildershipuniversity.com and get started writing your school success story today.